Last time we had to do that.
We talked about it a little bit.
We
do
had
tomatoes
yesterday.
too.
And I did
Yeah.
that. Okay.
My tomatoes are.
Good evening.
Huh?
Today is Monday, August 23rd, 2021. Welcome to this evening's regular meeting of Oregon City Council. Let's begin tonight's meeting by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council for attendance this evening?
Mr. Tavish?
Here.
Mr. Horniak?
Here.
Mrs. Pollock? Here. Mr. Reeves?
Here.
Mr. Seaman?
Here.
Mr. Wallenseck?
Here.
Mr. Sale?
Here. Thank you, council. Please note that all members of council are present this evening. Also joining us, our clerk of council, Ms. Tina Evans, Mayor Michael Safarian, our city administrator, Mr. Michael Beasley, our public service director, Mr. Paul Roman, our police chief, Mr. Brandon Began, fire chief, Mr. Denny Hartman, and assistant fire chief, Mr. Mark Mullins. Council, our first order of business, or before we get to that, I wanted to address kind of what's kind of, I believe, kind of spiraled last council meeting. And I wanted to talk to you about instituting maybe some guidelines. I've always prided ourselves as council of giving free rein to speak to council or to our citizens. And I think it's very important that we continue to do that. We've had guests come in, and one as recently as the gentleman from the Recyclops said he goes to council meetings all over the country, and this is the first council he's ever seen that provides their residents a freedom to speak before council without time limits and allow them to address council with concerns. He said most councils give them a 3-minute window. Council members don't even pay attention. Some councils don't even allow their residents to speak at their council meetings. I pride ourselves with the ability and the freedom of letting our residents come speak before us. And I want to maintain that, but I wanted to kind of institute some guidelines so that we don't have situations that happened 2 weeks ago happen again. So I just want to briefly kind of go over some of them. I'm going to ask Tina to type these out for me. But we are going to move the persons and delegations to the end of the meetings. And council, if you guys have any objections to any of these, please, let's talk about them. But I want you guys to approve of these before we institute these. But if somebody has something to talk about, an agenda item that we have before us that given evening, we will talk about that. They can talk. They don't have to wait to the end of the meeting if it's an agenda item. All individuals that want to speak, we're going to ask them to sign in. No more adding at the end, jumping into the meeting right before it's over. So we're going to ask all individuals to sign up on the sign-up sheet. The sign-up sheet is going to be in front of Tina and I, and before we'll go through our meeting, before we get to persons and delegations, I will ask, does anybody want to sign up? This will be, we're going to start persons and delegations. Please sign up if you want to sign up. And if you sign up, you'll be able to speak before council. We'll go in the order that people sign up on the sheet. No reserving spots, just sign up, can speak. And I would ask that we don't interrupt people that are speaking, give them the courtesy of speaking before council, address the council members and the administration. This is not a forum to air grievances amongst residents. You're here to speak before council. If you want to talk to a resident outside of council chambers. You'll have one time to speak, no jumping back up to rebut something that somebody else says. If you have anything else after you speak and something comes up, please address council after the meeting. We'll stick around if you could, in case residents have any questions for us. Let's be courteous to the residents and answer their questions. Council, does anybody have any objections to implementing these guidelines? Thank you.
Mr. President?
Mr. Seaman.
Yeah, I know now, like, we have an item, let's say, that is part of the agenda that people want to speak to now. That clearly is not at the end of the meeting. I know you said that, but I'm just saying, let's keep that clear. I mean, we could have already voted on something and then they want to speak about it. Then they didn't get to have their inputs that we could consider in our vote, but
If they can sign up before the meeting and if it's an agenda item,
Yeah.
I will call on them to
Yes.
come up and speak
yeah,
for
that's
that.
what I
I'll make
want to
that
know.
very clear that
Yeah,
you will be able to address council on any agenda item that you want. If it's not about an agenda item, we'll wait to the end of the meeting and they can address council at that
because
time.
I wouldn't want somebody that already had been voted on and they wanted to speak about it. That wouldn't be too cool. Yeah.
If it's for an agenda item, they will be able to speak at the time of the agenda. All they have to do is indicate on the sign-up sheet that it's for an agenda item.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any council members have any other comments? Okay, thank you very much. And again, I don't want to put any limitations on our residents. You're free to speak. We're just going to have a couple guidelines so we don't spin out of control. Thank
Mr.
you.
President,
Mr. Reeves.
the only thing I would have to, that I would like to possibly add is it's got to be a respectful manner. We understand that there are things that people disagree upon, but some of the disrespect that has taken place needs to cease. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Seaman.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mr. Reeves. And you know, we're all Oregonians and we're all here in the same boat and we're all neighbors to each other in a sense. And we have to try to work together, but yet healthy discussion is worthwhile. And I'm not saying we can't have that. That's important. But let's just remember one thing. We all are Oregonians and we all have a city that we're working to make even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. With that, our first order of business will be the approval of the meeting minutes from the July 12th, 2021 regular meeting of council.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Seaman.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented from the July 12th, 2021 council meeting.
Motion by Mr. Seaman,
Second.
second by Mr. Reeves. Council, is there any objections? Here, no objections. The meeting minutes from the July 12th, 2021 regular meeting council are approved as submitted. Council, we have no agenda items per se, but we do have a public hearing. This public hearing is for an extension of the application of the SUE 157-18 for a special use in an R2 medium density residential zone district to operate a restaurant/tavern on parcel number 44-18527 that was previously approved by council with conditions on January 14th, 2019. The owner applicant is BJ Lawson, BJ's Hideaway Steakhouse LLC. The location is 506 Lallendorf Road. I will open the public hearing at.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but could we get a description of that SU that was agreed to back then? I know we have it here in front of us. Just an explanation if we
I'm
could,
going to ask
please.
for the administration to present it to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. And this location is 506 Lallendorf Road. Like I said, I opened the public meeting at 7:17. And Mayor, are you going to present the SUE? Usually Mr. Gilmore gives us a little overview.
I can do that.
Yes, please.
Okay, and Counselor, you did vote on this back, you have the date before you, I don't have it right in front of me right now, but being that the COVID hit, Mr. Lawson was unable to open the restaurant at that time, so the time lapsed in between the 2-year period lapsed in between the time his application was approved and the current time when he's scheduling to open the restaurant. We believed we had latitude, the state gave us latitude, but we could probably operate under the last SUE you approved. But Melissa thought all in all, it would be with more certainty that we would bring it back up again and vote on it just to have complete clarity for this SUE. And I believe there were 3 conditions with that SUE approval. One was that it would maintain, or 4, all right. It would be a restaurant serving alcohol. They would not serve past 10 p.m. The parking lot would be secured with curb stops and the waste receptacle located in the rear of the property. and each of those conditions, I believe, were met. And so it is now you would be voting on virtually the same thing you did a little over 2 years ago. And talked to Mr. Lawson earlier today. He had some problem getting equipment, as a lot of people have noticed in these times. And as soon as he gets the rest of the equipment that he's ordered to upgrade the restaurant, he believed he would be able to open sometime in September with his fingers somewhat crossed. So any other questions that come up, I think we could address them. But once again, if there was some requests or interest in opening a patio at this time. We didn't think it was the right time to pursue that. Just get the restaurant open, and that would be something that he could cross at a future date if it came up. It was actually suggested by the Board of Liquor Control that restaurants should have patios in the times, just the way people some people choose not to dine in unless there is a patio. And they explain different things like that to him, but to simplify it and keep it clear is just what you precisely voted on before, identically the same with different dates. Yeah, so the patio is not part
For
of
this
it.
time,
Not
he
here.
can come
It would
back
have
and
to
ask
be-
for another.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you, Mayor. And Council, I will remind you, if you have any questions for the administration as we move forward, I have received multiple emails from residents. They're having trouble hearing us on the recording, so please do talk into the microphones. It's hard for the residents that are here in council chambers to hear us, so please talk into the mic directly so that the people here in attendance can hear us and in the recording. Thank you. At this point, I'll ask if there's anybody to speak in favor of the SUE. If anybody's here to speak in favor, please step forward to the podium.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Mr. Lawson is here if questions come up. He didn't really have anything to say at
He
this
can
time.
address them at
Because
that
he
time.
would be here to answer that.
Thank you, Mayor. And is there anybody here to speak in opposition of the SUE? Being that there's nobody, if you're here to speak in opposition, please step forward and state your name and address for the record. You got to step up here so we can hear you. And state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Mark Wineland. I live at 430 South Loundorf Road. I did not sign the sheet.
That's
You
all,
don't need to
for
go
the
to
public
public
hearing, you
hearing.
don't have to.
Oh, for this one, we don't.
Yep, public hearing, you do
Okay.
not.
At the last meeting, I stated that I was opposed to allowing the variance. I'm still opposed to allowing the variance. And to answer the question on, and Mr. Gilmer's not here today, but how the sign is placed in the yard so people can see it or not see it. I answered that question myself. The sign is only printed on one side. So if it was put, so if you were driving down the road to be able to see the.
Are you talking about the public hearing sign?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Because that was question on how that was instructed to be placed in there for the notice. Because if it's parallel for the road, you don't see the sign as you're going down the road. And actually, most of the people here are elected officials. When you put your signs out, they put them so as you're driving down the road, you can see the sign. And that's what I thought would be a good idea for the public notice, because people may not see it in the newspaper, but they may see it driving down the road.
Understand. Thank you for the suggestion. Thank you.
Appreciate it. So, and, so the question about having the outdoor patio, that's
It's off the
not going to
table.
be addressed today.
It's not part of this SUE. He'd have to come before us again with,
So then
Another
there will
SUE.
not be an outdoor patio.
unless he comes forward with another variance.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in opposition? Being that there's no other individuals coming forward, council, is there any questions that you have for the administration?
Mr. President?
Ms. Poliff?
I just want clarification.
Ms. Poliff, if you would pull the mic forward, please. Thank you.
For clarification, is there anything different about this SUA that was put in there that wasn't before?
No, it's precisely the same, other than
Okay.
the date.
So the only thing that's the date, the garbage can stays to the back?
Correct.
Everything that
That-
we approved
The
before?
conditions are identical to what was applied for 2.5 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Poliff. But Mr. Seaman, do you have something?
Yeah, well, now, the ending of serving takes place at 10 o'clock.
Well, what it is traditionally, they don't take orders past 10 o'clock. So if somebody came in at 9:59, they wouldn't throw them out of the restaurant at 10 o'clock. They would have time to eat, but they don't take orders. Mr. Lawson said his objective is to be ready to leave the restaurant somewhere around 10, but would acknowledge that if a late diner came in just before 10 and ordered, that they might not get out of there at 10 o'clock.
What's last call? I want to know.
Like
last call.
10 o'clock. 10
10
o'clock.
Yeah.
One not served,
Is that serve food or
No.
serve alcohol?
both.
at
Well,
10
that-
o'clock?
Well, once again, they could order the food prior to 10 and it may come out.
Is that part of the variant or part of the SUE when the closing time or when the last call is
Doesn't
going to
say
be?
closing time.
Or
Wouldn't
not closing time, but
wouldn't
last
take
call? is-
orders till after 10.
And that's part of the SUE?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Counselors, any further questions?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Horniak.
I have a question. It actually would be to Mr. Lawson, if you don't mind the question on this. So some time ago, we were referred a request for a change to the liquor permit tied to the restaurant to extend the serving hours to 2:30.
Mr. Lawson, I'm going to need you to step, because we can't pick it up on the microphones. If you could step up, I apologize.
When they issue a license, usually it's for 2:30,
Mhm.
one, that I got. But like I say, I even told them I was only going to serve at 10 o'clock. That's it.
Was there not an existing license there? My understanding was this
Well,
is
you
a
have
change
to
in
pay
the
a
existing
certain amount,
license.
So it's $2,300 a year. And so they give you 2:30 liquor license, what to do. I didn't want them, but, he went with the package deal. But I like I say, I only served at 10 o'clock before. Sometimes we went out maybe to 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Sure.
10 o'clock was their limit because, I just don't want to. You get too many stragglers from other bars that come in there, so I didn't.
That was my question. I
President,
just didn't
I
know
just
if
wanted-
there- if
Steve-
there was any intention to that because, like I said, is having a liquor permit till 2:30 when you can only
No,
serve
there's
till
no- There's
10.
nothing to it. It's just the liquor control would love you to serve to 2:30, so they make that money. But, I'm only going to serve 10 o'clock. And if I could got a 10 o'clock license, I would. But the 2:30 one went with it, what amounted to.
Okay,
Just about all liquor licenses come at 2:30.
okay.
Okay.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Lawson.
Oh,
Thank you,
Mayor?
Mr. President.
And I was just
Thank
going
you,
to
Mr.
say, in Steve and to the rest of council also, is that even though he has a 2:30 liquor license, the conditions take precedent over the governing of when the serving would be done. And the serving of the alcohol would cease to exist at 10 o'clock due to his conditions.
And Mayor, may I ask, if Mr. Lawson was to sell the establishment, the
The
SUE
condition
is
goes
enforced
with the
with the
property.
property. Thank you. Counselors, any further questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Seaman?
now, what was the last year that was open?
3 or 4 years ago, not sure, because I had 2 operations on my knee and one on the other knee, so I sort of, closed it down completely. And then when I wanted to open back up, the virus is here and all that stuff there, so.
Okay, what I'm getting at is how many police calls came while it was still open that last year? And what about Bikers Night?
That was.
Was there?
Jim, you're going.
It was never a fact.
No, bikers night.
Jim, that was the
That
restaurant before
was, that was game time.
I'm just saying that created a problem. I'm just saying, I don't know if you're not gonna do that probably. Okay. But that was a concern at one time, is what I'm trying to say. No, and just that created a lot of noise, not to say there's anything wrong, but it just created. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. Any further questions? Hearing no questions, we'll close the public hearing at 7:30. I will assign item number 99 with ordinance number 99 of 2021 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Authorizing an extension on SUE 157-18, a special use permit on parcel number 44-18527 for property located at 506 South Wallendorf Road for the purpose of operating a restaurant tavern in an R2 medium density residential zone district.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of ordinance 99 of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Ms. Evans, would you please take roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 99 of 2021?
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavlov?
No.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
No.
Mr. Wallenseck?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes.
The council please note that the ordinance did pass by a vote of 5 yeas, 2 nays. That concludes the items for consideration and pass this evening, and we'll move to the mayor's report. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. Council, you have some correspondence I sent out due to some appointments, retirements, and I will first start off with asking council's, I'm going to go with the retirement first, and that is, council, I'm going to ask you to concur with the retirement resignation of Ralph Burgess, and it'll be effective October 1st, which would be last day, September 30th, 2021, and I'd ask council's concurrence in accepting the wishes of Ralph Burgess to retire after September 30th.
Thank you, Mayor. Council.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Davish.
I move to concur with the mayor of the retirement of Ralph Burgess.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Council, is there any objections? Here are no objections. Mayor, council concurs with the retirement resignation of Mr. Ralph Burgess.
And next, council, from the recreation and the seasonal appointment that after the, and this is the effective hiring date of tomorrow, August 24th, and that would be of Joseph Paulson, 636 North Stadium Road, step 1, $14 an hour, classification 7. And once again, that's for the council's concurrence in the appointment of Joseph Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr.
Council.
President,
Mr. Reeves.
I move for, excuse me, I concur with the mayor's appointment of facility manager to Joseph Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Council, is there any objections? Here are no objections. Mayor, council concurs with the appointment of Mr. Joseph Paulson in the Recreation Department.
Okay, and then from the Water Distribution Department, we have 2 people to hire, and the first one would be Mr. Kyle Brown of 1892 Wright Avenue, Millbury, Ohio, as maintenance worker in water distribution, step 1, hourly rate $26.66 an hour, annual rate $55,452.80, and the effective startup date for Mr. Kyle Brown would be September 7th, 2021, and ask council's concurrence in the appointment, once again, of Mr. Kyle Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Council.
Mr. President,
Ms.
I
Ms.
move
Pawlus.
to accept,
Move
or
to concur.
sorry. I accept to concur with the mayor's appointment of Kyle Brown to maintenance worker in water distribution effective September 7th.
second.
Thank you. Second by Mr. Seaman. Council, any objections? Hearing no objections, Mayor Council concurs with the appointment of Mr. Kyle Brown.
Same position, Mr. Adam Newton, 758 Euclid Avenue, Toledo, Ohio. Maintenance worker, water distribution, step 1, 2666, 55, 45280. And Mr. Newton's appointment will be a day later, September 8th, 2021, and ask council's concurrence in the appointment of Mr. Adam Newton to the water distribution maintenance. Once again, September 8th, 2021.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
Mr. President.
Yes, Ms. Pauloff.
I move to concur with the mayor's appointment of Adam Newton to maintenance worker and water distribution, starting September 8th, 2021.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Council, is there any objections? Hearing no objections, Mayor Council concurs with the appointment of Mr. Adam Newton to maintenance worker in the water distribution division.
And lastly, the appointment of the IT coordinator and residential plan examiner. And I would ask council's concurrence, and this would have a startup date September 13th, 2021 of Mr. James T. Schmidt, 406 Dudley, Maumee, Ohio. And it is at step 2 of the SME pay range, which hourly rate $33.20 an hour. Annual rate $69,056. And once again, startup date September 13th, 2021. As council's concurrence in the appointment of Mr. James Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Seaman.
yeah, I'd like to know more about this person in term, I mean, I don't have any brief resume or anything. I was wondering where that is. Is this an important position? I'd like to see that, if possible.
Mr. Seaman, Mr. President, my apologies, Mr. Seaman. I thought that you had that. It is, I have his resume here. I'll pass it down to you. This is an individual that I'm really excited to get for the people of Oregon. He is highly skilled in both from the plans examiner area, building inspection area. He's a U.S. Marine with strong experience, with strong IT skills. He's really got an unusual blend of experiences that I think can be a real plus for us. And it is a relatively unusual hybrid position to deal with a hybrid need. In maybe better times, we try and fill 2 positions. But at a time when a city is trying to, be fiscally reasonable as we can, to look for ways to achieve some synergies when possible, we're looking to do that. Over time, if the city's needs evolve, we could end up with 2. Is an individual with the skill set to go in either direction, should that come up. But with the needs that are there right now, we don't think it is necessarily reasonable to have put two full-time people on each side. We're trying to achieve a broader objective with one individual, and we're kind of excited by it.
Did the previous person have plans examiner certification that held that position?
The previous person had skills he had a degree in planning and working that. Alex Schultz had the position that was kind of a hybrid position as well. And he had a planning degree, but in this case, as we worked through it, he ended up with when we looked at the needs, we realized that we could really achieve a better need, and for the city long-term, where someone can actually fill in within the department. We even took some steps to a MOU with AFSCME so that we can recognize that a person can fill in background on the clerical side when necessary. So we felt good about it. The bargaining unit felt good about it. And I think it's a really good value for the taxpayers long-term.
Well, I'm wondering, is the AFSCME MOU?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
They're satisfied with this
Absolutely.
too?
Absolutely. We had a good session on it.
Okay, well, I've got some concern in that regard.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. At this point in time, council, what's your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I will move to concur with the mayor to appoint James Schmidt as position of Information Technology Coordinator / Residential Plans Examiner as of Monday, September 13th of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Council, any objections?
I object.
Please note that Mr. Seaman did object. With that, Mayor Council concurs with one objection to the appointment of Mr. James T. Schmidt to the IT Coordinator and Residential Plans Examiner.
Okay, council, the only other thing I have is that tomorrow at 9 o'clock, it is 9 o'clock, I believe, we are having the press release on site of where the new fire station is. So we'll be there to kick off the ceremony for the new fire station tomorrow on the site at 9 o'clock.
Thank you, Mayor.
And with that, I would conclude my report.
Mr. Beasley.
Mr. President, just to add one note, a couple of members, Councilman Reeves, Tim Zale, Council President, have all brought up, and there's been discussion about golf carts in Oregon, and some communities allow them more broadly. We allow them under certain circumstances when they're street legal, but there's some legislation that might be, there's some ambiguity embedded in the law. And we're going to have an ordinance that we will present coming up for the next council meeting. And we think it might be a good idea to have a little public hearing, to have some clarity about, I think Steve talked about it, a number of you have talked about it over the years, whether we, among the questions that have to be resolved are, do you allow them on all streets, simple residential streets under 35 miles an hour? Do you allow them, when do they have to be street legal, when not? Clarify that you have to be a licensed driver to drive it, and all those pieces of it. I will say it's an interesting issue that we have some residents kind of who contact us urging us to be broader and allowing more, and other residents who call us to say we have to crack down on young people driving golf carts. It is a nice amenity in some places, and council's got to decide what makes sense as it goes forward with it, and where it works and where it doesn't. So maybe we'll bring in the legislation at some point. Councilman Zale, as the chair of that committee, could schedule a meeting in a couple weeks or a couple weeks after that. It's up to the council.
I'm thinking our next council meeting, our next regular meeting would probably be September 13th.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that would be a good day.
Okay.
About 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
Okay.
All right, we'll do that. We'll have the legislation, and then we can just, again, we'll have police come out and give us some sense of what makes sense. We'll talk about, we'll talk with the folks from public service, and we'll just talk about the whys and wherefores, if that makes sense. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Mr. Roman.
Nothing to report, Mr. President. Thank you for the appointments and the water distribution, but the two of the appointees are here, and I thought maybe they could just stand up and introduce themselves real quick.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Newton. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Reeves.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Zale.
No report, Mr. President.
Mr. Seaman.
September 1st, the rolling food truck farmers market on Dustin Road, so pray for good weather. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. Mr. Davish.
No report, Mr.
Thank
President.
you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Poliff.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Poliff. Mr. Horniak.
Briefly, just as much to say the Economic Development Foundation did have their first in-person meeting in quite some time last Friday. I was unable to attend, so I can't speak much to the substance of it, but it was good to see that they could actually operate, move forward with an in-person meeting. So appreciate their efforts in that. That's all I have, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. And Mr. Beasley, I have a question. I don't have any report from my standing committee, but I do have a question, and I brought this up earlier today. It was noted from Anita Lopez that valuations of properties in Oregon are going to go up by 19.5% across the board. Jerusalem Township, I think, is just about the same, about 20%. And I would like us to start explaining to our residents what that does for our property taxes for our residents. And I know that it has to do with inside versus outside millage. Would you be able to give us a brief understanding of how that affects? It doesn't necessarily mean that we're getting a 19.5% tax increase on our property taxes, but I want the residents to know what to expect.
Mr. President, that's an excellent question. In some ways, you need a whole course to explain this all. In general, when we vote for millage on a tax for a service, the city of Oregon has no voted millage except we eliminated our police, fire, and rec levies a number of years ago. we live on income tax. There was a petition brought forward and there was a vote for a small property tax levy for senior services. On any voted millage, that revenue from that millage is locked in at the amount that you're paying when it is passed. So if we, the voters of Oregon or the voters of the county vote to pass millage of 2 mills for something that would yield, or half a mill that would yield $200,000, let's say, even if my value goes up, it is locked in at that $200,000 that it yielded
At the year
of passage that was voted, so that, or the first year, so that there was what's called an auditor's certification of what the tax will yield. And then there is what the tax yields that first year. Even if the value of my home doubles, I'm still only going to pay the amount I would have paid with that. There's a few asterisks and exceptions, et cetera, down the road, but that's the general rule, so that when my property doubles in value, or even by maybe it's double in value, but nobody's assessed it higher. Even when it's assessed at double, my property taxes don't double. Now, remember, for the city, almost all, about 3% or so of your property taxes come to the city. We just have inside millage. I'll try and explain that one. That does get an asterisk. In general, about 71% of our property taxes in Oregon are going to our school district. That's pretty typical in Lucas County, with some exceptions. Ottawa Hills, it's a little higher. But again, it varies by community. The balance of them are overwhelmingly for the things that citizens have voted to fund. The county library system, the mental health board, developmental disabilities, areas on aging, the metro parks, on down through the list. Those taxes will still be fixed at generally at the amount it was when they were voted in. So it doesn't create that big a tax increase. Now, the exception would be of our effective millage in each space and communities, maybe our effective millage is, let's say, 77 mills that we pay. 10 of those mills are what's called the inside millage. That's automatic in every county in Ohio. And I suppose a community could vote not to collect it, but in general, they're collected everywhere. And those are apportioned between your city or township, depending on where you live, the county, and your school system. And those inside mills, so a portion of your property tax bill will go up with your valuation, just 10 out of whatever that effective millage rate is. So I will actually work up a number and share it with council, showing exactly how that breaks down for Oregon residents and businesses. It's a little bit of it's a question that none of us understand and as well as we should, but it's worth understanding. So that's a fair question, but that's generally how it works. I know that all of us like to pay less is the bias. But the good news, to the extent you get it, even if the value of my property is going up, the bill I owe for any particular service is locked in generally at the value of what it was when I do it. I guess if there's change of use, there's some exceptions to those things. I'll get a little broader explanation out, or maybe we can have someone from the auditor's office and to kind of go through that between now and that. But it is a subject of some controversy. The good news is in Ohio, in many states, when the local government adopts the budget, the property taxes automatically go up to cover that. Ohio doesn't have that. The good news here is that the only way they go up is if people vote to raise them, except for that inside millage portion, generally. All right.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Seaman.
So like in that inside millage, then, it's Mr. Wallensack brought up what he heard from Ms. Lopez, that might be going up 19%. That might affect the inside millage then?
It should, yes, generally. Okay.
All right, very good. We will move to the persons and delegation portion of the meeting. Is there anybody who has not signed in that wants to sign in and speak before council? Very good. We're going to start with Ms. Ackerman. Ms. Ackerman, please come forward. State your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Beth Ackerman, 931 Bury Road, Oregon, Ohio, 43616. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna keep it brief because I expected the BJ's thing to go a lot longer, so I thought we'll just keep it simple tonight. Thank you for reining us in. I feel a lot less threatened this evening than I did at the last meeting. And I appreciate you having an officer here. I would suggest one outside the front door.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Just when, yeah, we all know what happened. So anyway, I wanted to ask Mayor Safarian, I'm hearing a lot about a turnaround at BP. Do you know, what do you know about it, and what can you tell us about it?
Mike Beasley knows more of the details, but there's going to be a major turnaround.
Right.
For next
I just
year.
heard about it, and I
Yeah.
don't, I mean, admittedly, I don't.
Well, it's a normal thing.
Yeah,
That They,
Mr. Beasley.
Just. Mic on? Just as a note, we usually have some notice that they're coming until they actually pull the trigger on it. They sometimes delay it or reschedule it or change the shape and size based on their business needs. But all major industrial physical plants from time to time will shut down portions or all of any given line to allow maintenance, rebuild, cleaning, retooling, things like that. And it usually in general means a little higher traffic from workforce. And it could be, sometimes they last 2 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks. We don't know all the details on it. They've just let us know that there's going to be something next year, not this year, but sometime next year. But until they get to it, that's where it is. It's their private business decision, but in general, we will work with them closer to it to help schedule police to direct traffic and things like that. But until they get into the details of it, that's what we know.
I'm hearing contractors are saying they're staying on, so that would be like, and it's being expanded, and so that's an investment, right, in the refinery, so that's good news.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's absolutely. We'd like, Mr. President, we do like to see those sorts of investments and
Oh, that's,
we'd love to
okay.
see it.
Well, that's, I mean, the things I have to learn. I wanted to ask, well, on a positive note, we're still waiting for a lot of the hits, I guess they're called, when in our delineation to come back, and apparently those wheels turn slowly when we had a delineation done by a biologist. And so, but on one of the things I wanted to share with you guys is that they don't release we don't have the whole report yet, but there's significant bat habitat. So I know we're pretty excited about that. We're going to expand on that and find out specifically what types of bats and stuff, because when they did the survey, I guess they have to go in and like GPS every single tree or wherever they find habitat for them. But I don't know, that was just something, I know it's probably boring to you guys, but I wanted to ask Mayor Safarian too, it's different people are telling me that you're saying there's only like 100 people that are in opposition to the any industrial growth in the eastern part of the city. I just want to give you a chance, like, is that a rumor or did you actually say that?
I don't recall saying that.
Oh, okay.
I don't talk much about it.
Okay, okay. Well, it's all the buzz out our way, but anyway,
I'm sure you make a lot of buzz out
and I'm not the bat habitat, by the way, in case any of you guys want to, I'll beat you to that punchline. So I was wondering, we've got a lot more people, I mean, how many signs and how many yards inside Oregon would it take for you to take notice? Or our council people?
there. I don't understand the question.
How are we going to, how will you gauge, because the public input about the change of use, and it's a significant land use change to go from agricultural, residential to industrial. So, we're all on pins and needles out our way. So a lot of people are saying the 2025 plan is outdated. Do you have plans in the works to start a new a master plan? Thank you. So I mean, where are we at with that? I mean, everyone's saying, well, that, it's kind of outdated. How are you going about finding out what the citizens want to see or don't want to see? before you proceed with industrializing?
When we're faced with financially running the city, we take innovative approaches to see to it that we can secure different finances. This was an option you didn't particularly care for. It was just one that we would run by this council, and maybe with the right type of assembly plant, we figured we could possibly put it in there. You like to take the most negative approach, and if I was fighting something, I would probably do something similar. But the fear factor is effective when you try to take the worst case scenario and present it before your neighbors and stuff. It's effective. I understand that. I expected it. But I could still give options to people, and I'll continue to give options to people so that we can financially secure the city. And some of the things you may like, some of the things you may not, and we'll see what other people think. So we'll still keep coming up with innovative approaches, because if we don't, we wouldn't be doing our job. You've said the signs, when you said, I take notice of the signs, you said on those signs, it said, save our wetlands. Everyone up here, since we've been in administration in the last 12 years, have created 68 acres of wetlands in our city, more than I believe anyone in the state of Ohio, at least Northwest Ohio for sure. And we weren't able to find any other community that created that type of wetlands. So while you're just putting up the sign saying you're saving wetlands, we were creating wetlands before you even thought of it. So you said we were going to destroy wetlands, which our approach was not to destroy the wetlands if they were there, or the wooded area that would buffer the area. We would try to keep it all up. If they had to trim a little bit off, possibly, but mainly the objective was to keep it. But of course, when you're against the project, you would total devastation. You'd have us hunting eagles, and none of that was true.
I never
Yeah,
said
yeah, you
that.
did.
I
Yeah, you
never
did.
said
So,
you're
all right.
gonna hunt an eagle.
So in the interest, we all know that all that land, had it not been drained and tiled, would have all been wetlands. But farmers traditionally drain the land and destroy more wetlands than anyone else in the city or the towns or whatever. And here we are creating wetlands. So yeah, we've been saving the wetlands before you even thought of it.
I think
And
that
well,
I think
that's
the
my
acreage that
opinion.
yeah, I'm
You've
pretty
got a lot
sure
of opinions.
farmers are creating wetlands across the country. And I do think that we've been very successful in our approach to preserving the water quality and around our farm. And you do
More
bring up a
people,
really
more
good point.
farmers
And
have-
I
have
agree.
added to the.
Let
Does he
Beth
get a
go
turn?
back and
I
forth.
gotta-
Yep. Beth,
being
go ahead.
polite. I think that you raise a really good point, because I think if we got the farmers around that area, we could have the biggest wetland, and we could plug off our tiles and we can flood the place, and we could have this huge conservation effort that we could all do together and all be on board with. And it would draw birders and people that enjoy the environment, and it would help with CO2 emissions. So, I mean, hey, I'm the first to admit, if you guys wanna turn all that farm ground over there into a huge conservation effort, that's wonderful.
Well, you can do it. You own it. You can start tomorrow.
Hey, don't think I haven't already
Yeah.
started.
Well, I looked at it and it drained pretty quickly with all that rain we had. So there's some
You
time
looked
there.
at what?
When I drove by your property out there, it was drained fairly quickly.
How would
Let's
you
stay
know
on
how my
focus.
property drained? We have water structures that were closed that were not allowing the tile to drain into Aubrey Ditch, so I'm a little confused about that.
I'm
But
sure you are.
I get your hostility toward me.
I don't, I'm not hostile
understand,
towards you. Not at all.
uh,
Not at all.
Please continue, Ms. Ackerman.
But I would say, moving forward, I want to know what the city is doing to get, so, I mean, we can keep putting signs up for, as long as we need to, but can we have can you guys come our way at all and have some sit downs and some public meetings and some, I mean, because basically, again, we're only talking about it because I come in here on Monday night and I'm annoying and.
Mr.
Yeah.
Seaman?
Excuse me, Beth. You brought up something I've been thinking about for a long time. I haven't really expressed it well to the administration. I want to see a new master plan study started. And I would like to have people, yourself be part of it and others from the community. And of course, the administration, the council, whoever wants to commit some time to it, to look at the future. So much has happened in the last 15 years with all the technological development, and that all has an impact on it. Electric cars that are starting to raise their head, so to speak. We need to plan further. We had a 2025 plan, we need a 2035. It's time to do it because it's been a lengthy period of time since our last master plan. Like I said before, they're not necessarily cast in stone, and it's not an absolute Bible, but we need to get community input on a master plan. But I will say this, though, our administration, they're trying to be proactive, though. The mayor and Mr. Beasley are working for proactive reasoning, but it's kind of drastic. I'll admit to that. But I think if we sit down, we all talk, we explain things about our finances and about what our future, what people want for our future in a positive manner. Just like I said before, we're all part of Oregon. And I don't think the mayor's hostile. He's not. He cares about the future. But I mean, you care about the future too. And they're not exactly in the same way. But we got to sit down and talk about it, work it out. Instead of being.
all I'm
And I
asking.
know you will. I know you're 100%, and I know the mayor would too. But we just got to get like an icebreaker to get that started. And I'd be instrumental any way I could be. And I know there's other council members. I know Mr. Davish would like to do that too. And others on council, Mr. Reeves. But, we need to talk and be fair to each other. That's all I'm trying to say. And so we don't always agree on everything, but we will come to areas of commonality. We will help the whole city, I think. But what you're doing is very good, though, too. Conservation, look at what Jerusalem and City of Oregon.
I think
Jerusalem
that's
Township,
awesome.
that was great, But the mayor's right. Okay, across from Fire Station number 1, that whole area, we could have had a stream going right straight to the lake, but we got a massive wetland there. It catches all the water, and so all the pollutants settle there, and they move slowly to the lake, and it stops a lot of bad things from going into the lake. And we have wetlands out here. We purposely developed the recreation site. We try in that regard. Paul Roman, when he gets his grant, the state requires us to make wetlands, or we don't get the money. We have created some, but I agree that's a drastic move out there. But it could be considered proactive, possibly. But I would tell you that they would take every inch of avoiding every wetland and forested area, but it would cause an impact. The traffic impact would be significant.
So if you had a lithium fire, say, or you had some poisonous gases released, you can't mitigate that. You can't negate that. It would be devastating.
Yeah.
And changing the hydrology of those wetlands, even if you didn't touch them themselves,
It still
because what
changes.
we're finding out in the study is the wetlands extend far beyond what you guys think they
It's the
are.
whole geo- is it what
Yeah.
they call it, geome?
They-
How's that? Yeah, they call
I'll
it.
probably butcher it myself.
No, but it's a geome. It's the whole surrounding environment.
But
That's
yeah,
what-
the swale that exists in there is pretty significant. And it's just its placement. But again, we got off on the wrong foot in the public not. And somebody said to me, you had the town center thing, which that's moving, and I think everybody's excited about that. That happening.
It's gonna take some time, though.
Yeah, I know. Well, but it started with 3 public meetings about what do you want to see here? What do you want to do here? What is the public's view of what's important to you? And we've never yet had that yet
That's
out
the
our
master
way.
plan. That's your
So-
master plan study.
But they're
some of-
negating the master, but that would take a lot of money and a lot of years. I think some
Yeah,
public meetings
That's true.
would be a lot cheaper,
Yeah.
but Just saying, I'm just saying,
Just to have some
we're still
meetings.
looking for our voice. We're still, a lot of Oregonians are still looking for that representation. So, you guys could start, maybe before, again, before you lure in that big fish company, the environmental impact studies, you find out if that's even feasible there, and find out if the citizens, want to see, I keep hearing Gary, Indiana,
I wonder
do we
which
want
one-
that?
Which council member is in charge of the environment as part of their department? Which one is?
Jim, that's me.
Okay, well, you could, when you think when the timing's right for you and so on, you could call a meeting, environmental. And that way, to do some of what you want to talk about, just to have a sit down discussion, that would be good.
Yeah.
That's right.
All of the Oregonians aren't as loud and as obnoxious as I am about what their opinion is. Admittedly, I
You're not
get it.
loud. You're not obnoxious.
No, I am, Jim. Come on. Hey, I'm old enough to call it the reality of it. But hey, I'm a product, grew up in Toledo, just like a lot of you. And so I brought that out to Oregon with me, and 39 years later, when you poke me with a stick, I'm going to go back to my roots. So I apologize for that. But I'm asking very humbly for you to reach out to the public and find out what it is Oregonians really want.
Thank you, Ms. Ackerman.
And just to respond to that, remember you said I was going to create this plan. What I was offering was some options of possible revenue. I don't have the ability to put in a plan out there. I don't have that magic wand. I don't even get to cast a vote in it. But I do get to suggest that as an option that this council may choose to act on or not. And through the public meetings, I understand, you just said you don't understand the procedure very well, and you're starting to learn it. But you would make accusations that here I am going to sneak the plan in under your nose, which not even close to accurate, but you were pretty good at selling that. So you were effective.
I would say
And I
that
understand.
the stack
Wait a
of
minute.
maps with the thousands
go ahead.
of dollars that you spent of taxpayer dollars to present of how you're going to run the electric, the sewer, all of those things that came out about Project Maximus, that's a little bit more than, hey, we threw this idea out there to see if it would fly. You had it in the works. You had it in the works. I mean, those maps and that effort is very telling about what you were determined to do. It's physical evidence.
In your uninformed opinion, but like I said, we couldn't act. I couldn't act on any of that, but we were giving options to this community, and we'll continue to give options.
Ms. Ackerman, thank you so much for your time. Next on our list is, we have, and Doctor, I apologize if I pronounced your last name, Dr. Susan Oritz? Oritz, okay, thank you.
I'm Dr. Susan Orris. I'm at 7970 Brown Road. And I just wanted to speak. I'll try to speak for 3 minutes or less because I used to be a university professor and it may be hard. I would like all of you, in terms of looking at your master plan and what you want to do with Eastern Lucas County, Eastern Oregon, and looking at Eastern Oregon and Jerusalem Township. From a wetlands perspective, it's fair to say that we only have 2% of the wetlands remaining. And Mr. Mayor, it appears that people who are in, like the program I'm in, the CREP program, and others, there's about 1,500 acres of private lands in Jerusalem Township that has now been put into wetland restoration, according to the ODNR. So there's ODNR, there's CREP, there's H2 Ohio, which I've done some public relations things for. There's also the Restoration Acts through the Great Lakes Fish and Wildlife and the American Wetlands Conservation Act. And there's a variety of partners. So and I can list them all, but the important thing is that Eastern Oregon and Jerusalem Township are extremely critical for their wetlands and their wildlife from a migratory bird perspective. It's also important for our citizens in a green space, potentially ecotourism. So as you think about this, I would like you to consider the long-term effects of it. And it's because when you put things in there, those birds or those animals don't have a place. At this point, with just the amount of restorations that's occurred, we now have, and I helped with the trumpeter swan restoration, we have those birds here. We also have sandhill cranes here. We have black-bellied whistling ducks. We have a number of species of shorebirds that we didn't have, including the piping plover. So even though those wetlands are fragmented, we have more. So I would just urge you in your thinking process that you hold the jewel. You hold the wildlife jewel. And I would hate for you to screw it up. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Mr. Seaman.
And I think really what she's saying, this is for our children and our grandchildren especially. I mean, we have to think about the future. It's not everything just for where we're at. It's our children and our grandchildren.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. At this moment, I'll seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Seaman, second by Mr. Reeves. Council, any objections? Here are no objections. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Is he still holding Tesla? Is he still holding Tesla, your boy?